Alright, so I'm gonna do a review of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1. A little bit of context. I have played both games, and the first game is just way better than the second game. If the first game, I would give it probably a 10 out of 10. The second game is like a 6 out of 10. Everything is great except for the story, right? The whole thing between Abby and Joel, I just don't like. But that's a whole different video. Um, what else? Yes, I did want to mention that the quality of my videos right now are not going to be that great. In terms of I'm pretty sure you guys can see the video is flickering a little bit. I've been trying to fix it on OBS, but it's not working so far. And this is the best mic that I have. Um, and it'll just get better over time. I'll get new equipment, and over time, the quality overall will improve. Now, The Last of Us, Episode 1. Um, let's start with the positives. The filmmaking is pretty good. I like, I forget his surname, but Craig and Neil Druckmann do a good job with this. The guy that directs this is, I think he directed this, but he's one of the creators. He did the Chernobyl show, and that was great. And season one was pretty good, except for them missing a bunch of stuff from the game. But for the most part, it was pretty high quality. Um, so I might be a little bit biased towards this season because, as I said, I didn't really like the story of the second game. Um, let's see, where do I begin? Yes, let's start with the positives. The filmmaking. Every single basic element of filmmaking is really good. Like the shot selection, the lighting, the acting, everything is good. Um, Pacing's pretty good. There were some moments that I'll mention that's part of the negatives that I think were quite useless in terms of wasting time and pacing. In particular with the therapy scene with Joel and Gail, I think her name is. Yes. Um, but the rest of that was pretty good. They are changing the structure of the story, it seems, in terms of showing it in a chronological order rather than going back and forth between Ellie and Abby. And they do show Abby early on with the rest of her friends, with Manny, Nora, Owen, and what's her face? I forgot. Anyway, um, Mel, right. And so that's pretty much the positives. So the episode I watched a few hours ago, so I might be a little rusty with details. And I'm supposed to keep this short, but I do want to talk about it in detail. Um, the first new thing that we haven't seen before is Ellie doing jiu-jitsu with a random guy that we've never seen, and she's pretty good. But that's not part of the game. We don't see that in the game, and I think that's cool. And then Jesse comes in and criticizes her skills. Anyway, I probably should cut this out. Two things that I want to criticize in terms of them changing certain things about Joel. The first one's with Joel, and let's just talk about that. So he's going to therapy with Gale, who we don't see in the game, and he doesn't go to therapy in the game. Even though I didn't like the game, I do like comparing what happens in the game, what happens in the show to the game, because that the game is the actual source material. It's essential to how we, the viewers, see the game or the story in general. So if they want to change things in the show, that's fine, but it has to work for the actual characters. And I think it doesn't work for Joel do to go to therapy, to have a full scene where he's doing a therapy session with Gail, and it turns out that a character briefly mentioned in dialogue between Ellie and Dina, Eugene, is Gail's husband that Joel killed. I'm not sure why I'm supposed to care about this, but apparently that's important. And so those kind of scenes is where I think this show is going wrong. It just doesn't make sense for Joel to be in therapy since he's quite a reserved and conservative man. When I say conservative, I don't mean politically. I'm talking about he keeps his emotions to himself. The entire first game, we see that until the very end, where he becomes more emotionally attached to Ellie, and that makes sense. But in general, I don't think he's the type of person that would seek help, therapy. And there's nothing wrong with therapy. I just think that scene is quite pathetic in a way. Like he's supposed to feel bad for what he did in the first game. It just doesn't make sense. And I personally think that Joel did the right thing at the end of the first game, right, where he saves Ellie from the Fireflies doing that surgery that could potentially create a cure. I think he did the right thing by taking Ellie out of it, but I do understand why Ellie would be upset that he did that. But that's a different thing. So that scene was, yeah, a point of criticism for me. And the second scene was Ellie when Dina and Ellie are going on patrol to try and basically see if there's any runners or infected out there to clear out infected to, I assume, make the environment of where they live more safe. Right. So they go in, there's a cool scene where Ellie throws a Bud Light bottle. I don't know if they're sponsored, but she throws a bottle at the clicker and they take care of that clicker, but then she falls down through the roof and ends up in the area where in the game you're surrounded by, I think, at least two clickers and maybe four runners or something like that. And in the show, it's just one stalker. One stalker is in the corner somewhere, and with the filmmaking, they build suspense and make it dramatic, but I don't like that. That doesn't make sense. Why would they change that? I know why they changed it. It's because probably they don't want to spend that much money on the amount of runners and clickers you would need in that scene. Probably to save money within the budget. But this is a really big HBO high budget show, so I'm not sure why they keep limiting all the enemies, all the infected. This is exactly what they did in the first season when they didn't really show a lot of infected until episode 5, when they all come out of that house and you see that bloated, and that was really great. That was a great scene, really good CGI and all that. But in this scene, they do the same thing where they get rid of 99% of the affected, and I think that's just going to continue with the show until later, and maybe with one episode, they will do the same thing as episode 5 in season 1, where they will bring out a bunch of different affected, and that would be a really great scene. But I wish they were more accurate with how the game actually looks like. It is accurate because in that scene you can see a hole in the wall and snow is falling down. That's exactly how it looks like in the game. And that's the stuff that I like. where the set design and everything else just looks great. But in terms of the technicalities of the infected, it's just not the same, which is kind of nitpicking, I guess. But the major problem in the scene is that Ellie, for some reason, struggles to kill this stalker. Now, I know that they want to build suspense in the scene for probably people that didn't play the game and are just watching the show. Um, it builds suspense by having her walk around for a minute or so, and it seems like the coast is clear and there's no infected, but all of a sudden you see the shadow of a stalker, and then it becomes a little bit scary, and they want to build that suspense of the stalker eventually jumping on Ellie, and she does get infected again, which I don't know if that happened in the game. Probably not. Um, yeah, later you see the infection is on her stomach. But anyway, why does Ellie struggle to kill this stalker when I know they didn't show in the first season, but in the game they encountered a lot of different, well, not that much, but they encountered stalkers, and watching Joel, she should know how to handle a stalker. All you have to do is grab the shotgun, which she magically has, get around to the corner where the stalker is, and shoot it in the face. It's not that hard to kill one stalker. If there was five, I would understand why she would be cautious and walking around and struggling. But there was only one stalker, and it took her like 5 minutes to kill it. And that's with the stalker jumping on her, and then she manages to grab her shotgun, I think. Not shotgun, handgun. She grabs her handgun, and then she manages to kill the stalker. This is, once again, I will use the word pathetic because she should know how to kill a stalker. Anyway, that was a bit of a rant about those are, uh, that was a bit of a rant about the negatives of this particular episode. And those are the two scenes that I wanted to point out because it's a outstanding example of what I think will continue to see in this season is sort of that kind of laziness or laziness in terms of the amount of enemies we will see um, moving forward. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they just decided to change that to make the filmmaking better, to increase tension and those kind of things. What else is there? Yes, they introduced Abby, and she wants revenge for Joel killing Jerry. We know that Joel kills um, her father, Jerry, who was the surgeon who was supposed to do the surgery on Ellie in the first game and also show. Um, and she wants revenge for that, and Owen talks to her and says that we promise we're with you and we are gonna find Joel and kill Joel. And I think what they're trying to do is I hope they try and make Abby more likable by, excuse me, by potentially redoing or restructuring the show in a way that creates more sympathy for Abby. Whereas in the game, they didn't really do a good job at that, in my opinion. Um, and that's probably thinking about it too much. I'm gonna keep this video short. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, yeah, there was a really, I did appreciate the set design of when Ellie and Dina have that dance that in that party area and the lighting effects during that scene was really well made. And so that's another positive thing that I wanted to add. And then they establish that scene where Joel pushes Seth out of the way because Dina and Ellie are having a lovely lesbian moment, and he says it's a family event, and he gets really stiff about it, and Joel comes in and pushes him away, and then Ellie says that she doesn't need his help. And so they have that scene earlier in comparison to the game where they show that flashback later in the game, I believe. And they just talk about it between Jesse and Ellie at the very beginning of the game. That's another thing. Instead of Jesse picking up Ellie from her little house cabinet, right? Cabin, I mean. Instead, it's Dina. And now I'm not sure if that entire scene was actually what they wanted to do in terms of replacing. See, it's confusing because they replace stuff that doesn't happen in the game, and so it's slightly confusing for the audience because that happens again earlier, not early, I don't know what part of the episode, but they have that scene between Ellie and Tommy where they are shooting runners in the distance, except that's in Jackson in the snow. And I just don't know if that's in present day or if that's 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Because in the game, it's like around 2 years ago or something like that. And so I don't know if when those scenes happen, are they in the present day and they just swap out Jesse for Dina, or if it's just a completely different thing. So that's where I think it's slightly confusing as the audience. And it's even more confusing if you don't know the game. If you know the game, then you can probably take a guess at the timeline. But I think if they are trying to show that that scene between Tommy and Ellie was years ago, they should probably put a title that says for 2 years later or 4 years later. Anyway, yeah, that's all. Oh, so the rating. I will give this particular episode a 6 out of 10. Just because the filmmaking was really good, but once again, there seems to be a little bit of a problem with the actual story. If the problem is, as I said, I am biased because the entire story of season two, not season two, the game part two, I just don't like. So it's really easy for me to criticize that. And so I put down 4 points because of the story. But the filmmaking itself is quite good, um, which is something that I would expect for a high quality HBO. Well, they like to call it Max now, which by the way was annoying to purchase the actual thing for a month because I live in Australia and I'm used to going to Binge to find HBO stuff because that's how you can view HBO stuff from Australia is by using a platform called Binge. But now Binge doesn't do that. It's its own thing. And I was trying to log into Binge and it wasn't working. And then for some reason, I don't know. And then I found out that they introduced Max to Australia. So I'm watching the show on Max now. Anyway, I don't know why I'm rambling about that. It's completely pointless. Anyway, that's what I have to say about this episode. And I'll see you guys next time for the next video. Probably a review for episode 2. Although that's next week, so I'll do something else. Bye. Thanks for watching.